Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Maria Stefanova, and you're watching another episode of Wednesday Night Conversations. We connect different music educators and musicians and their knowledge, and with all of our episodes, we try to provide a vehicle for classical music and music education to be seen. Today, we are discussing some of the non-musical elements needed to develop a music program or an orchestra. We discuss care for the musicians in your ensemble, developing empathy through music, and the need to develop your own audience. As a part of a series, revealing and talking with different conductors, I'm excited about having Gary Lewis here today.
My pleasure.
Before we jump into talking about music and music education, I was hoping you can walk us through your own experiences with your education, as well as past and current conducting positions.
Sure. Well, my earliest musical training was actually not in classical music, but in guitar, and it was my teacher was a former guitarist at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, and so but I learned a lot of things from that study about the theory of music and about chords and harmonies and even arranging at a very young age. And then I had really influential school band conductors. I started band in 5th grade, first on trombone, and then switched to tuba and continued playing guitar and began to play jazz during my my secondary training, and was a tuba player and a jazz guitarist coming out of high school. My undergraduate degree is in music education from the University of Oklahoma, and I aspired to be a really great high school band director. That's what I knew I wanted to do. And upon graduation, then I decided to go on directly into a master's degree in wind conducting, which was at Texas Tech University. And that, of course, broadened my horizons even more, and was still looking forward to teaching public school band. And during my master's degree, I came to know a gentleman, John Whitwell, who was the director of bands at Abilene Christian University. And I started driving down there once a week to teach applied low brass, which is the last thing I ever expected to do. But he was looking to not have those duties on his plate anymore. And so that built a connection there, and then they created a position for me, and I was able to earn that position coming right out of my master's degree. So I was associate director of bands at Abilene Christian, and then John left after a year. I became director of bands there, still doing jazz and some other things, still performing. And then 3 years later, I was invited to apply the University of Michigan, associate director of bands. I was there for 5 years, and at that point began to conduct orchestras more regularly. Gustav Meyer, who was on the faculty there, was a huge influence on me and a mentor, and allowed me some opportunities. Began to conduct summer orchestra and opera festivals during that time. After 5 years there, I became director of bands at Ohio State University, but continued to work with orchestras in the summers and summer festivals, etc. And then my old mentor from Texas Tech University, Jim Sudduth, with whom I'd done my master's degree, was trying to entice me to consider coming back to Texas Tech, and a position opened up there, and I was hired as the director of orchestras and conducted opera there, and I was there for 10 years. And at the end of that time, I won the present job where I'm at now at University of Colorado Boulder. During my time in Lubbock, I also became the music director of the Midland Odessa Symphony Orchestra, a post which I'm happy to still retain at this point. So that's sort of a brief overview of my professional life.
You may or may not know that a long time ago I got offered a PhD at Texas Tech, and I know quite a few people there. So in preparation for this conversation, I talked to my friends from Texas just a little bit, and I wanted to see what they know about your conducting and how to direct the conversation. So the overwhelming messages I got was lots of consistency and care about the musicians. Let's start there. The personal element when developing a music program or teaching is very important to me and very important to communicate through this podcast. So I was wondering what your thoughts were.
I think you're absolutely right. I think especially this last year, given the difficulties that we've all gone through and the restrictions and the inability to meet live for long periods of time. For me, that really brought home the exact point you were making, which is that what I miss the most is the interaction with other people, making music with other people, the collaboration. Yes, the music is important, but the music, as I see it, is a vehicle to that communication, both within an ensemble, within a group of musicians, but also communicating with an audience, and that level of communication. I think that's why we all do what we do as musicians, is because it allows us to communicate things that otherwise can't be communicated, and on a level, on an emotional level, that words simply fail. And so I think the difficulties we've been through during the pandemic have just highlighted that even more clearly.
Mm-hmm. And we are filming this during very difficult times for classical musicians, where we're not able to fully develop our music programs. Hopefully, this will no longer be the case soon. And I was hoping to talk to you about your ideas stepping into a brand new musical ensemble.
Well, I do think, of course, every situation is unique. Every group of musicians is unique. Every musician is unique. So I think back sort of to the original point, I've always viewed the musicians as human beings first. They happen to hold a particular instrument in their hand, or happen to be a singer, or whatever the case may be. But they are not inanimate objects. An ensemble is not an inanimate object, but it is a collection of human beings, all with their own different experiences and needs and desires, and so trying to tap into that, I think, is really important in building a sense of community. There are certainly things that I think are important as far as how one leads a rehearsal, how one treats people, how one inspires people, the passion that we bring to our work as a conductor, as a teacher, is going to be reflected back to us. I mean, every ensemble is really truly a reflection of the person who's in front of it. And so trying to build a culture of inclusivity, a culture of inspiration and passion toward what we do, and energy and all those things, I think, build an environment in which people can feel comfortable to flourish and to contribute. Also, I think the way that we run our rehearsals can either be sort of, exclusive, or remove us from or put us above the fray, so to speak. Or it can include us being collaborative, inviting the group to collaborate. I talk a lot about how even large ensembles should aspire to be more like chamber groups. And the way we make music in our large ensemble should be more like the way that chamber musicians make music, in that we are aware of each other, we collaborate, we're not in our own silo at our own stand, but that we are out of the stand and aware of what each other is doing, and knowing where to listen and how to communicate and how to collaborate is, I think, the principal role of the conductor, or at least it should be, rather than a follow me, I am the end all be all and have all the answers. I think everything from the way that we lead the rehearsals and the environment that we create, to the way that we actually move and conduct, is either facilitating that kind of chamber-like collaboration, or it's making it more difficult. So those are a few just overarching goals that I have every time that I have come into a new situation. I want people to want to be there to make good music, and I want to try to inspire them to be their very best, and to collaborate with each other at the highest possible level.
Absolutely. And thank you for already answering a lot of my questions that I had. When, as a younger conductor, sometimes we learn through our mistakes. So for conveying messages to musicians, is there anything that you'd like to share, a mistake that has taught you a lesson as far as building that community that we're talking about?
Oh my goodness. I think we all have learned from the mistakes of some of the people that we've played under, but I've certainly made more than my share of mistakes over the years. I think another thing that I think maybe experience and age brings to you is just a little bit better perspective on what really the most important thing is, and that is introducing great music to more people and hopefully enriching their lives, not only while they're there, but giving them the skills to transcend what our own program, to transcend what we do. And so I think when we're younger, often we tend to be a bit more myopic. We tend to be a bit more performance oriented. This performance has to be perfect, and I'm going to do everything I have to do to make it so. And so I think while you don't have to lower your standards, I think at the same time we have to have a bit broader perspective on why it is that we do what we do, and really what is the end goal. Is it to prepare toward a test, so to speak, or to prepare toward a particular performance? And of course, all of us as artists want the level of craftsmanship and the level of achievement to be as high as it possibly can be. But I think if we build into the culture a lot of these things that we've been talking about, then I think it only helps the level of achievement or musical perfection, as it were, as if that's even possible, to be at an even higher level.
Yes, that balance between striving for excellence as well as making sure that the musicians want to be there and developing an excellent community, it's so important. And I'm wondering if we could talk about it through the perspective of different age groups all the way to conducting professional orchestras.
I understand what you're saying, and in fact, I on Monday night, I had a rehearsal with the youth orchestra. I had a rehearsal earlier that day with the university orchestra, and I just returned from a concert with my professional orchestra 2 days earlier. And so I feel fortunate to have a foot in each of those areas, and I think it informs what I do with the other groups. But I've often contemplated this. Yes, the verbiage may change a little bit, but for me, it's not a difference in being how I convey the musical elements. It's just a matter of how much do I unpack that. So, for instance, with the youth orchestra, I may have to talk in more detail about how do we achieve this technically. Here, or there may be more pedagogy involved in the language that's used in the rehearsal. At the university, there's probably less of that. And with the professional orchestra, there's even less of that. But with each group, I try to use the same sort of, I request from the orchestra, would you please do this? May I have just a little bit more of this? Please listen to this group. Please connect with this in the ensemble. So it's always a matter of hopefully directing their ears, making a musical request of them, and treating them with the respect that they deserve, no matter what age they are. So for me, the attitude and the positivity, I guess, is it where I try to never be, don't do this, or stop that, or you're rushing, or this or that, but I try to couch those requests in a positive frame. Do you think we're rushing or dragging here with a younger group? Well, let's try it again and listen carefully to this group to the double basses while we do this again. Whereas if it with my professional orchestra, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're tending to rush just a little bit here. Please focus on the snare drum, and I think that'll lock it in. Let's try it again. So it's just a matter of how much pedagogy is involved in the instruction. But hopefully it's all couched in a musical and in a humane way.
This is very helpful, and I'm wondering what our audience may think about their experiences. So if you may have thoughts, please share in the comments. And to continue, you talk about bringing audiences and the necessity for conductors to be open to the community and to bring the audience in. Could we talk a little bit more about that in your thoughts, again, with the different levels at the, for example, public school system, youth symphony, collegiate, and professional levels?
Well, I suppose there are some differences there in that, in academia, I think most our audience, frankly, is almost exclusively the students who are in front of us. I mean, those are the ones that we are serving. I know at the university, we typically don't sell tickets to our concerts, so I don't feel a financial obligation when I'm programming. However, with the professional orchestra, there's absolutely that, because unless people are buying the tickets and want to come and hear the music that we're playing, then we're going to have a problem. So there is some difference in that respect. I think when it comes to academia, no matter what level, whether it's secondary or higher education, the repertoire that we perform is the curriculum. And that's, so we're making those decisions based more on, balancing the experiences of our students, giving them a broad spectrum of stylistic and, experiences, et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully, we're exposing them to a much more diverse and inclusive set of composers as well. And that's, I think, something that is incredibly important and something that's being discussed a lot now, frankly, and it's long overdue. So there is some difference, I think, in what the motivation is behind the way that we program. But as far as reaching out to the audiences, whether it's public school or higher ed or professional, I think the way that we address the audience, the way that we educate our audiences without it feeling like they're being lectured to, I think it's important for us to be able to engage the audience, important for us to be able to articulate why it is that we have chosen this music, what we think is important about it, maybe give them a little something to hang their hat on as they're listening to the piece, so they have some perspective on what it is they're hearing, especially with newer music. So yes, the way that we communicate, and especially the way that we communicate with our administrators or with our audience in the context of a professional orchestra, is really important.
Besides engaging the audience as far as the music choice itself, there's also engagement as far as outreach. Do we do enough as musicians to promote classical music to younger musicians? And do we do enough to really help the people who are learning?
Well, it's certainly something we should aspire to do more of. I mean, of course, everybody's going to be in a little bit different place with that, but with the professional orchestra that I am honored to lead, we just, in the time of COVID now, we just had to videotape our typical children's concert, where in normal times we would have packed the auditorium and played 3 or 4 shows for something over 5,000 area elementary school students. This time we made a video recording and we're distributing it to the schools, just given the COVID restrictions. But so that's something that we try to do. Our smaller ensembles within the professional orchestra are out in the community, and they're doing school programs, and they're performing in the library, and I'm doing pre-concert lectures in the library and in other places around, television interviews and in the media, and pre-concert lectures. And so I think we're doing our best, but certainly we can always do more. When it comes to public school programs, of course, we have the added element of recruitment, right, into our programs, trying to attract those younger students who are thinking about what direction they might want to go when they get of age into our programs. And so it becomes a really critical aspect of our program. And at the university level, we are also needing to recruit students to our program. So we're trying to entice them to come and see what we're about and what we're doing and the level of music making we have here, and trying to recruit them very actively. So yes, there is certainly an outreach element to what we do, and an educational element to what we do. In public schools, that may be helping our administrators to understand the value of our program, or helping people within the community to understand the value of our program, and why what we do is so important to the development of those students. So as musicians, we certainly can't afford to sit back in our ivory tower and expect everybody to come to us and sort of worship what we're doing. We have to constantly be connecting and educating and evangelizing about what we do as musicians.
This is absolutely something that I would like to communicate more and more through this podcast. So thank you for bringing up these topics. And I'm wondering if we could delve with it a little bit more. Is this something that you learned through the years? Was it a process? Using the community and the outreach element that is needed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think we all grow in our ability to do it. Public speaking has never been a challenge for me. It's something I was doing from a very young age. And so I've always felt comfortable in front of people and talking to them about something that I was passionate about. And music has always been something that I've been passionate about. And I thought that everybody needed in their life. They may just not know it yet, you know? And so I felt like I wanted to talk to people about why music making develops better human beings and not just helps the brain to develop so they get higher SAT scores. You know, I think it's important for us to be able to talk about the emotional and the spiritual element of music making and how it just makes us better, more empathetic human beings, something that we need more of certainly in our society today. So I think, yes, we learn how to do it. We learn that we need to do it. Because I know there are people who would rather just sit back and not have to advocate for what they do, but just to be able to do what they do. And sadly, as musicians, there are very few cases where that's going to be possible. We have to be advocates, and we have to convince and cajole and inspire other people to support what we do, both financially and administratively and otherwise.
Absolutely. I think as musicians, we have to not forget that we need to talk about music in order to have people listen to it. Now, if we were to step away from advocacy just for a minute, and if I asked you what is meaningful to you, what would your answer be?
Well, I think the older that I get, those personal relationships that become more meaningful. I think perhaps I'm less professionally ambitious than I was at a younger age. I think that's true of a lot of us as we go on through our careers. I think what's important to me is to be able to share how music helps us to be better people, to be better human beings. How music can communicate things that can't be communicated through words or through any other medium. I think music is uniquely capable of communicating the most significant and deep, profound human emotions. I think that's why music is present at the most important events throughout our lives, from our birthdays to our commencement exercises, to our weddings, to our funerals, to patriotic music. It is important for us and it communicates something that we just simply can't communicate any other way. I think classical music in particular has a unique ability to communicate certain things about the human condition, about certain events, about the way we feel and treat each other. And so that's one of the reasons why I admire it and love it as passionately as I do. On the other hand, I'm not at all, I try not to be at all prejudiced against other, types of music and the things that they can do and the happiness that they can bring people on a daily basis. I mean, as I mentioned, my first teacher was a country musician. I played in a country band when I was in high school. I played jazz and continue to be a huge fan. And so my musical tastes are quite broad, and I am not for an orchestra conductor. I think I'm pretty accepting and of all types of music, because they speak to humans in their own unique way, and there's nothing better or less good about one than the other.
I think the more I talk to different people, the more we come back to the same idea, which is acceptance of people, acceptance of different types of music, and connections. And I think that's a wonderful way for us to pause this conversation with one last question. If there's one idea that you want our audience to get out of this conversation, what would it be?
What I've been thinking most about in recent months and years even is how making music together helps us to develop empathy, which is one of the most important musical or human characteristics or aspects of our humanity. I think it's something that is in increasingly short supply. And I think that's something that music is uniquely positioned to help us to develop as human beings. When you're performing in any kind of an ensemble, you realize that it doesn't matter what color or what background or what creed or what ethnicity or that person sitting in that other chair is. You know that they are vital to the success of this collaborative effort. And I think because of the nature of a lot of the music that we create, and the fact that music can really bridge these divides within humanity in a really unique way, it is especially important. My wife is an elementary music teacher, and she taught for several years at a school where there were 11 different languages spoken in her 2 kindergarten classes. Many of them had no English skills. Yet the music class was the one time in the day where they could collaborate. They could be part of the group. She also taught in Title I school where many of the students weren't sure where they were going home to that night, and yet the music program was able to serve them in a really important way because it was the oasis in their day. It was the one time where they could be themselves and to collaborate with other people and to socialize, and music allowed those connections. And so I think music at all levels help us to be more empathic people and help us to treat each other better.
Thank you, and I am grateful for this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.